Oh, I'm with my friend Susan Eick, who I have known for way too many years. And Susan has been a prospect. I don't think she could remember that the first calls that I had with her. I was sitting on the airport floor in Mobile, Alabama, talking to her in faraway Denver. She's been a client several times, different banking organizations and one non-banking organization, and a great resource for me over the course of my career, because Susan brings a lot of wisdom to the challenges that I faced in trying to grow my business. So Susan, delighted to have you here.
Great to be here. Has it been like years and years since we've known each other? Because clearly neither of us have aged at all. So.
Absolutely not. But we won't tell people how long we've known each other, but we can
No.
measure it in decades, and it's more than one. So tell us a little bit about the story. You know, I picked it up when you had already been in banking for a while, but talk to me a little bit about how you moved from banking into the consulting work you're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. So, oh my goodness, banking. I started in banking in 1985, believe it or not. I was still going to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and had my first internship there at the Marine Bank, which became Bank One, which became Chase, and just fell in love. I mean, I think once banking is in your blood, it's in your blood for good. And through the years, I did a couple of different stints working in industries outside of banking, but always managed to find my way back, either through consulting and then getting hired by banks to work for them internally, or doing different projects with them. So I mean, literally worked for large banks like Chase, and when I was working in Denver, and mostly always on the retail side. And also some super regional banks and a regional bank, and then moved into an organization, Deluxe Corporation, that serviced banks, and I was responsible for heading up the marketing function for them, selling to banks and credit unions, and then moved to Canada and did some amazing work working on a consulting basis with some financial services organizations and tech organizations, and worked in consulting for a number of years, and then had the fortunate call one day from a recruiter who was looking for a new CEO of this amazing organization called Refinery. And that's what brought me here. So yeah, but I'm still, as we've talked about before, I still have banking in my blood, still love the industry, and continue to love working with the people there.
Well, I know that that's true. So I want to start. Let's start with banking, and then we'll move forward here. So you managed at different times fairly large retail operations. At one point, I think you had multiple states, branches that were in growth markets that were not growth markets. What advice would you give to bankers in managing retail banking operations today, given all the things that are changing? If you had to give career advice to someone, what would you tell them?
So it's a great question, because on one side, I think, is retail banking that much different today than it was when I was in retail banking? I mean, certainly there are different competitors that you're working with now. You're dealing with fintech organizations, you're dealing with non-bank entities that are competing for your clients. But honestly, when you're leading within a retail banking organization, it comes down to being able to be an honest, transparent leader with your people who work for you in the branches. So making yourself present. Banking has always been traditionally a very hierarchical organization, and people are proud of that hierarchy. I don't know if it's still the same way, but I sense that it might be. And I remember when I was managing, I think at one time it was 71 branches in my quote unquote domain. And I underestimated the impact of my presence as I would show up and just talk to people. And it meant a lot. And people would approach me, regularly saying, remember that day that you showed up dressed up on Halloween and handed out candy? That was goofy, but we loved it because it made you human. So number one, be approachable, be transparent, be honest. All the things that, your grandmother told you as a child apply in any industry as a leader.
Mhm.
But the other thing I think specifically within retail banking, because you have a mass of people working
Mhm.
for you, and most of these people are, working as tellers, personal
Mhm.
bankers, small business bankers, um, they they need to be communicated with. And I think so often, because you're working, your people are in so many different domains, and to try to get to them physically now is nearly impossible. But being a capable communicator and being able to capture the attention and hearts and minds of your employees, your team members, whether it's on a Zoom call, a
Mhm.
conference call, an email, that is so important. And I tell people this all the time. You have to become, if you're not currently a natural communicator, you've got to become a really,
Yeah.
really good one.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how good your credit skills are, doesn't matter how
Mhm.
great, your operational background is. If people don't believe in you, if they don't think that they can trust you because you're not a competent communicator, you're sunk, because without your team, you don't have a domain to rule over.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice, and it's become particularly acute today because it is harder for people to get together. I was
Yeah.
talking to a senior banker today who said that one of the things he's learned over the pandemic is he doesn't have to travel as much, but he has to communicate more.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I remember you gave me some advice. I solicited your advice about sales advice that you had benefited from. And I may be misquoting you, but one of the comments was, don't hide behind email.
Right.
Today,
Right.
it's, don't be bashful about picking up the phone, but also using tools like Zoom.
Well, you're right. And the bottom line is, and I forget who mentioned this to me or who shared this with me early in my career, but basically he told me, people want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Your clients want to hear from you. You may think, oh, I'm just a salesperson and I'm bothering them, but they want to hear from you, especially now. There's so little, assuredness in society right now, but people want to know they can count on their banker, they can
Mhm.
count on their bank.
Mhm.
And just having that human connection with people is so important, especially if you're their business banker, especially if you're their commercial banker. Um, they want to know they have that attachment, and it doesn't take much. I mean, like you said,
Mhm.
it's a quick phone call, even a quick email, a quick connection on
Mhm.
LinkedIn, even text. I mean, people
Yeah.
respond so well to text now. It's easy and it takes no time at all.
Yeah, good advice. So I'm going to go a little deeper into your banking history because you've
Mhm.
shared this with me. You got fired from a job in banking.
Yeah,
You want to
yeah.
talk a little, and you've told me that was actually, in retrospect, pretty important in a lot of ways in terms of your career.
Right. And I actually love talking about this story. Maybe not so much the day it happened, but
Yeah.
because I think I may have even talked to you the day it happened,
Yeah.
while I was still in shock. So despite all of the things that I think I did really well as a leader, in my banking career, the communication, making myself available, connecting with people,
Mhm.
one thing that I learned the hard way that I was not good at, and I still, quite frankly, struggle with as a leader, is understanding how to involve people in change.
Mm.
And this is so critical now as we're going through all these immense changes, whether you're in banking or any other industry right now. The pace of technology change, the pace of communication, of people's expectations for what they desire of you as a leader, it's so quick.
Mhm.
And if you are about to implement a change, in my case, I was hired on in an organization to basically transform the
Mhm.
culture to more of
Mhm.
a sales culture.
Yeah.
And I was all over that. As you know, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
a dyed of the wool salesperson. And I thought, well, this will be easy. I did it with my
Mhm.
last organization. And
Mhm.
little did I realize the reason that it worked in my previous organization is because I had spent time there already building relationships with
Yeah.
people and getting the other leaders on board with the
Mhm.
change.
Mhm.
I planted myself in this new organization and just hit the ground running and started implementing
Yeah.
stuff. And I didn't realize people around me were actually in back of me looking, going, what the hell is she doing? Why is she not talking to us? Why is she just so headstrong and focused?
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, what happened is my boss sat down with me and said, look, you did everything we asked you to do, and you did a fantastic job. We have, you basically did exactly what we hired you to do. However, you pissed off a lot of people in the process.
Yeah.
And so that was it. And it was a harsh realization, but it was one of the best things that could have happened to me, because I knew I would never make that same mistake again.
Yeah, I think that's really important. One, we have to, figure out what happened. I mean, that's the first question. And then you have to sort of go back and process. And it's hard, particularly, when you are in a new organization, to necessarily know how to communicate. It's also hard in a new environment. And we touched on it a minute ago, but this COVID-19 thing is a new environment. And, you're working with people in a variety of industries at Refinery. I guess I'm curious what you think the message should be for people in the banking industry who are trying to navigate through this very tumultuous period. Some of these people have struggled mightily. They've struggled for a lot of reasons. It's hard to, work from home if you're homeschooling second graders, trying to keep on top of your customers, and dealing with parents who may be, trying to get vaccinated against the coronavirus all at the same time. What would your advice be, having worked with leaders in other organizations?
Well, I think the first thing that we've learned, along with other leaders as we're going through this changes, is to be transparent about the fact that you don't have all of the answers. Yeah. I think, within banking, there's so much equity put on assuredness and certainty, and for a good reason. And as leaders in banking, you're not necessarily reinforced or given credit for the times that you ask what if, or I wonder, or being curious about anything, or admitting that you don't have the answer, but you're committed to finding out. So I think, honestly, as a leader within banking, or frankly any other industry, just admitting that you don't have the answer, but allowing people to understand that you're committed to helping them, you're committed to standing by them, that you're committed to finding the answers when they have questions. That goes a long way, and it goes a long way with your customers and your clients as well. I mean, they may be asking you questions like, is my interest rate going to go up? Are you going to call my loan? I mean, how is the bank doing in this time? There's not always times that you can say with absolute certainty that that'll never happen, or you're locked in, or we're here for good. But whatever you can provide them in terms of assuredness, that means a lot to them right now.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's particularly apropos. You're not dealing with this in Canada, but there's a thing in the United States called the PPP program. Yes. And there's a lot of uncertainty still about the loan forgiveness portion of that, which began last year. But bankers have to communicate, and leaders, I think, as you point out, have to be honest, open, be prepared to say they don't know the answer. So, Susan, this has been great advice. I appreciate your taking part in the first international Ned Talks. This is the first cross-border. This is great stuff. But thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's been awesome.